When the guns of World War I finally fell silent, the world believed peace had arrived. Empires collapsed, treaties were signed, and maps were redrawn. But while the war ended on the battlefield, its most dangerous legacy was created at negotiating tables. Lines were drawn across continents by politicians who had never seen the lands they divided. These borders were meant to stabilize the world, yet instead, they planted the seeds for a century of conflict that still burns today. The victors of World War I faced an enormous challenge. The Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian empires had all fallen apart, leaving behind vast territories filled with ethnic groups, religions, and languages deeply intertwined. Rather than allowing these communities to define their own futures, European powers prioritized political convenience and strategic advantage. Borders were drawn quickly, often with rulers in straight lines, ignoring centuries of history on the ground. What mattered most was not stability, but control. Nowhere was this more damaging than in the Middle East. As the Ottoman Empire collapsed, Britain and France secretly divided the region through agreements like Sykes-Picot. Ancient communities that had lived independently were forced together inside newly invented states, while others were split across multiple borders. Groups with long-standing rivalries were suddenly expected to coexist under fragile governments, while shared identities were broken apart. These artificial borders created nations that lacked unity, legitimacy, and trust conditions almost guaranteed to produce instability. Europe faced similar problems. In Eastern Europe, new countries were formed to weaken former empires, but ethnic realities were ignored. Millions of people woke up as minorities in states that did not represent them. Germans were placed outside Germany, Hungarians outside Hungary, and Slavic groups scattered across borders they never chose. This sense of injustice fueled resentment, nationalism, and political extremism, creating conditions that directly contributed to future wars and ethnic violence. Africa experienced some of the most severe consequences. Even though much of the continent had not participated directly in World War I, colonial borders drawn earlier were reinforced after the war, locking together rival tribes and splitting unified cultures across different countries. These borders were never designed to create functioning nations. They were designed to extract resources efficiently. After independence, African states inherited these lines, along with the conflicts embedded within them. Many modern African civil wars trace their origins back to these imposed boundaries. The long-term problem with these borders is not just geography, but legitimacy. Borders work best when people believe they are fair. The post-World War I borders were seen as foreign impositions enforced by power rather than consent. When governments lack legitimacy, violence becomes a tool for change. Over time, political struggles turned into armed conflicts, and armed conflicts turned into cycles of revenge that are extremely difficult to break. What makes this legacy especially dangerous today is that these borders are now defended by modern weapons, global alliances, and economic interests. Changing them peacefully has become nearly impossible. International law prioritizes stability over justice, meaning even deeply flawed borders are preserved to avoid larger wars. In many ways, the world we live in today is still shaped by decisions made a century ago. Conflicts in the Middle East, ethnic tensions in Europe, and instability across parts of Africa are not random or ancient hatreds. They are the predictable outcome of borders drawn without understanding the people who lived behind them. World War I may be remembered as a past event, but its map is still active, still contested, and still shaping global politics. History reminds us that borders are not just lines on paper. They are powerful forces that can either unite societies or tear them apart. And when they are drawn carelessly, their consequences can last far longer than any war.